Hello and welcome to Rock Paper Shotgun. Cyberpunk 2077 is the game on everyone's minds at the moment. Well, probably not your granddad's. One of the most striking things about Cyberpunk 2077 so far is its look and its setting. So who better to sit down with than the senior concept artist? So, to find out more about the world that's been created for everyone's favourite game that's not even out yet, Rock Paper Shotgun sat down with Marthe Jonkers, CD Projekt Red's senior concept artist, and she's also the coordinator of the concept team on the visual design of the districts and locations in Night City. Before we get into it though, a quick thanks to Logitech G and the G432 7.1 surround sound gaming headset for sponsoring this video. To check out the tech behind the G432, click the link in the description. First things first then, what is Marthe's team responsible for?
The environment, and there's also a team in Warsaw, and so we are just a part of the team, so I don't want to take all the credit for this. Team effort is
Cyberpunk 2077 is from a tabletop RPG, where everything is created from the player's imagination. So it must be incredibly hard to come up with ideas for this when you're having to start from scratch, as the Cyberpunk team are. What are Marthe and her team's starting off points?
I could talk hours about this, so be prepared. So because the approach of designing something like this is not easy, but we of course have Mike Pondsmith. You know, he's like walking encyclopedia of everything you need to know about Cyberpunk and the world and all the lore and all the history. So we really built on this. But Cyberpunk 2077 is of course 57 years later. A lot of stuff happened in the meantime. And now we ended up at this time, and now we have Night City. And so the design of the city, and I think I can talk most about that because that's sort of what my team works on. It's heavily based on like the lore. There are 6 different districts in Night City, and they all have a history. Some date back all the way to 2020, some are more recent events happening, but it's all based on this timeline. So I don't know if you've seen the demo already. Yeah, so that plays in Pacifica, and Pacifica is one of the districts. And Pacifica has this history of, it was supposed to be this resort area. And all these corporations were putting money into it, and they were building hotels, and they were building resorts, and there was even a Ferris wheel and everything. But then there was this economic crisis, and they all withdrew their money and just left it. It's just abandoned. At the meantime, there was this Haitian community, and actually Haiti was declared basically unlivable because of a lot of natural disasters. They actually moved there to that district because they thought, you know, it's a perfectly fine district. And actually it's nice that those corporations are gone. We can just, you know, live here and make a living here and make a nice living here. So they came over and started living there. So there's a lot of different layers in history that sort of define what this district is about. But we also really try to make every district feel very different. Because if you drive around Night City, we want you to really be aware of where you are. You know, that you know, like, oh, I'm now in Watson, or no, oh, I'm now in Pacifica. And we do that by making these districts very different. It's like in The Witcher, where you had Skellige, and that was sort of Scandinavian. You had Novigrad, was sort of Amsterdam, and we had this sort of a different atmosphere in all these areas. We have the same in Night City, but then it's per district. So Watson, for instance, was actually in the lore hit by an earthquake at some point. So after that they had to rebuild, so they kind of stacked all these houses on top of each other. And now this neighborhood, it's bustling, there are a lot of people, but there's also a lot of narrow alleyways and streets, narrow markets, it's sort of crammed there. It's actually, where V's apartment was, you went out on that street, you saw that big crowd, that's Watson. Very different style from Pacifica that we're showing now. And so we have 6 different districts, and they all are very unique in that way. But I can also talk about how we came to the visual design. And I don't know if you've seen the posters that were hanging on the wall. They actually represent like the 4 styles that we have in the game. We thought, like, if you design a city, like if you walk around Cologne, for instance, you will see all types of different architecture from different times, in different styles, and also in the cars that you see driving around. They're not all from the same age, you know, they're not in the same style. And even the fashion, like, we don't all wear the same stuff. you can actually see a sort of mix of different eras and different styles. That's exactly what we wanted to do for Night City. So what we did was we took the timeline and we attached to that these 4 styles, and they really reflect the time that they were sort of popular. So you have the first one, that's entropism, and this was a time when it was a tough time. There were a lot of people who were very poor. It was not the happiest of times. So the designs were very practical. And you see that in the architecture, you see that in the fashion, you see that in the vehicles. The shapes are very square, there are lots of corners, the materials are sort of cheap, it's all very practical, no decoration. So that's really that first style. Then you have the second style, it's called kitsch. Times were a lot better then, people were happy, and you see that in the fashion and in the architecture because there's a lot more color. So we have pink, we have orange, we have yellows, the shapes are much more rounded. And so we devised 4 of these styles, basically. And you can see them now in the city. So if you are driving around the city and you see this building and it's very sort of basic, very practical, with gray, very sharp corners. I mean, it's obviously entropism. That must mean that it's quite an old building, for instance. But if you see someone walking around with some sort of an animal print or something on their clothes, actually animals, they are really rare in Night City. Most of animals are extinct. So it's really expensive if you have something natural in your clothing. Then it must be the 4th style, neo-kitsch, which only the super rich can buy, you know. So, you know, you have this mix of all styles and you can see it in the district. City center is really corporate. So they have the neo-militarism style, which is the 3rd style. It originated in a time when corporations were in charge. So it is a really slick style. So you can expect if you go to city center where there are a lot of corporations, it's kind of they have their headquarters there, all the style will be a lot more like silver and white buildings, very slick. It's a high contrast with Watson, which has a lot of stuff from the 1st style, you know, kind of practical buildings where, you know, if you don't have a lot of money, you make something that's really practical. And that's what they did there after that earthquake. So you can really see in each neighborhood like these layers of styles.
Pacifica is a really beautiful looking area. It's got a kind of older, forgotten feel about it. Almost like it's being reclaimed by nature, but not quite.
Sort of like it's abandoned, but it's not like desolate. Like, you know, it's still very much, it's sort of beautiful in its own way. And people just made a living there. They made a good living there, and it's not like it's a super poor district or anything. It's more like people are making the best of these buildings that were just abandoned. You know, you can do nothing, or you can actually live there and make a good living there. So, I mean, Pacifica, yeah, it's a very dangerous district, that's for sure. But it also has some beauty to it.
One of the things that jumped out at us in the recent demo was how much the sunlight impacts the mood of the city. But just how hard is it for Marthe and her team to design a world with a day-night cycle in mind?
For our work, specifically for the concept art nowadays, and especially for Cyberpunk 2077, we really have to think about day and night and how would it look during the day, will it look cool during the night. And so we often make more than one concept, or we really think about where will the lighting come from, how will we light this area. For instance, Watson will have a lot of neon in there because it's a very Asian inspired district. And that's a great source of light. And during the night it looks awesome. But during the day it also looks awesome because there's a lot of colors and things built on top of each other. So we make sure that it looks great during the day and during the night. And yeah, that adds actually an extra layer of concept work for us, which is very interesting.
With Cyberpunk being a well-defined genre both within its own universe and outside of it, it must be quite difficult to create a world that exists in its own right. How do Marthe and her team create a world that doesn't end up looking like Blade Runner, and do they look to other cyberpunky worlds for inspiration?
Well, we definitely saw like every cyberpunk movie that's out there, because you know you have to know what's out there. So we know about existing, you know, visual style of cyberpunk, etc. But we really set out to make something unique, and we really took Mike Pondsmith's, you know, original Cyberpunk 2020 as our base, and we started designing really from these themes, like and stories and backgrounds. Like I said, those styles are really connected to in which era they were created, and so we really tried to make something unique. And I actually think if you see a screenshot now, you instantly know that it's Cyberpunk 2077. You know, you're not gonna say like, oh, that's sort of Blade Runner. No, actually, it's obviously Cyberpunk, and that's what we want to do. And that actually caused, some surprise maybe last year when we showed the demo and it was in this bright sun. And a lot of people were like, what's going on? You know, where is the rain and where are the neon signs? And like, no, you see, we can make this super cyberpunk setting, but we do it in sunlight because we design from the story and the themes and we build it up from there and we make our own interpretation.
Big question though, does Night City have a full weather system?
Yeah, we'll have a full weather system, yeah.
The feeling of being able to step into a world you've created from concept art to final digitized form must be a great feeling. But how does that feel for Marthe, seeing a virtual person walking around inside a world that was first imagined inside her head?
It's amazing, and I'm just so looking forward to the release and people actually playing it, and I hope that they will feel like it's a very realistic city, because we put those styles in it, we put those layers of lore in it and history in it, and I hope that it just will feel natural for them to play in, because I think immersion is one of the most important things in our company. We want to make immersive stories at CD Projekt, and having a city that actually feels like a city, that's so important for the immersion. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to people playing it and seeing it, and yeah, it's just really exciting.
Of all the regions and districts, which are Marthe's standouts?
They're all really good in their own way. I really like Watson because, I just really like to explore Watson because it has so many of these alleyways, and then you can go down the stairs and there's some cellar there, or you can go up and you go in a house, and it's like there's so much going on there. It's very bustling, there's so many people, so that's an area I really like. But I also really love Santo Domingo, which is the industrial district. It's sort of the power plant of Night City, so all the factories are there and all the power plants are there, and like Night City is powered by this area. It's very heavily industrial, which is sort of interesting, but it's also very dangerous, but in a different way. Like in Watson, you have to be careful for like a street gang encountering them on the street, and you don't know what's gonna happen. But in Santo Domingo, you have to be careful because there's heavy industry going on there. There's industrial waste and stuff like that, so it's dangerous, but in a different way. And actually, all of the districts have this kind of difference in how dangerous they are and in what way and what kind of atmosphere you will encounter.
Now for the important question. If Marthe had to live in any of the districts, which would she choose?
I don't think you want to live in Night City though. It's a really dangerous place. So I would probably live somewhere in like the city center on the top floor of one of those corporate buildings and have this view over the whole city. I'd like that.
We've not set foot in the world of Cyberpunk 2077 ourselves yet, so we're going to have to take Marthe's word for it when she decides on the best place to live. But either way, we do hope this interview has got you excited for the world the Cyberpunk team have created. And we think you'll agree it's been lovely getting to know some more of the thought processes behind what we've seen so far. And thanks again to Logitech G for sponsoring this video. Featuring 50mm audio drivers, a 6mm mic, and DTS Headphone X 2.0 surround sound technology under the hood, the G432 headset immerses you in the action and ensures you'll always be heard for a complete gaming experience. Find out how to order yours by following the link in the description. We're going to be covering Cyberpunk 2077 in the time leading up to its release, so why not subscribe to Rock Paper Shotgun to see all of our coverage? If you ring that bell, you'll get a notification so you can be the first to see what we share. Oh, and if you like this interview, why not give the video a like too? Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you soon.